to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to our first 2017 Global Genes webinar. It is on Health Insurance 101, so I just want to thank everyone for joining. Everyone should be entering in on mute just for the ease of the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function, and you can go ahead and message Global Genes or host. If you have questions throughout the webinar, we will be taking Q&A at the end of the webinar, and you can go ahead and use the Q&A function also on your right-hand screen. And if anyone's joining us late or has to depart a little early, we will also be recording this webinar, and it should be posted by the end of today along with the slides on our website. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Danny to get us started.
I want to welcome all of you to this Global Genes webinar on how to navigate your insurance as a rare disease patient. I'm Daniel Levine, principal of Levine Media Group and host of Global Genes Rarecast, and it's my pleasure to be moderating today's panel. We've got two great panelists today who have experience dealing with rare disease health insurance issues from different perspectives. Today, I'm going to share with you their insights from their experiences. Our panelists today are Dave Caponera, Vice President of Patient Engagement and Access Support for Catalyst Pharmaceuticals, and Gina Zanuck, co-founder and executive director of the Rare and Undiagnosed Network. They have Gina is an undiagnosed rare disease patient and is the mother of 3 children who also have undiagnosed diseases. Thank you both for joining us today. Also, I'd like to thank the staff of Global Genes and Ashley Yee for her great work putting together and coordinating today's program. This webinar is meant to be interactive. I encourage people watching this live to use the instant messenger in the bottom right-hand corner of their screens to send questions for the panel as we go. I'll do my best to answer work questions into our conversation and also try to save some time at the end for questions from the audience. Today we're discussing how to navigate your insurance as a rare disease patient. I should offer a disclaimer that this webinar will not solve your insurance woes. We're also not going to discuss health care reform and the fate of the Affordable Care Act. What we're trying to do is make you aware of some of the key things you should think about in dealing with health insurance issues, get help when you need it, and how to fight back when your insurance company refuses to pay for something your doctor thinks is needed. In this discussion, we've asked Dave and Gina to each begin with a presentation. With that, let me turn it over to Dave. Dave?
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate that. And again, thanks, Global Genes, asking me to present. I appreciate that. I'm actually going to present really sort of from a manufacturer, a drug company, and the programs that we do to help patients with their diseases. The booklet that Global Genes has put together on navigating health insurance has a lot of detailed information that can help you, and it's sometimes overwhelming. So you'll be able to take some tidbits away from the seminar today. Let's see. Actually, my slides aren't advanced.
Dave, your presenter privileges. Dave, go ahead and see if you can press the arrow.
There. Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. I want to disclose these are sort of my own opinions. I've worked within the rare disease world for the last 25 years for multiple drug companies and multiple rare diseases. Do not represent Catalyst's opinions whatsoever. Really, so we wanted to explain a little bit the objectives of my talk is really to appreciate the complexities of health insurance, which I'm sure many of you are aware of now. Learn about manufacturer programs to assist physicians, offices, and patients, and then sort of realize the variety of services that companies can provide. When a drug gets approved, and again, I'm approaching it from when a company has a drug available for rare disease. And again, you can take some of these tidbits even for other therapies out there. But usually when you find out there's something for your disease, you're really happy, and then all of a sudden the fear kicks in where it's like, oh my God, what does this mean regarding costs? What does this mean regarding access? What's all this paperwork? It gets when you're seeing all the paperwork that needs to be involved. reasons manufacturers really develop these programs are, during diagnosis, there's a lot of issues in regards to lack of disease awareness. When manufacturer starts working with an aware disease, they do try to get out there and educate. They're educating insurance companies about the disease, educating other physicians. A lot of times, as many of you are aware, the disease, physicians might have had a paragraph way back in early medical school. So that is really getting the education out there. Helping to educate about, well, what are the diagnostic tests out there. The manufacturers will, in regards to their treatment, will have a diagnostic test that they are also providing to help, identify the specific disease. And there's also just a fear of the diagnosis. All of a sudden, you're given this diagnosis. Where do you turn? What goes on? When treatment is available, there's the fear of the lack of health insurance coverage. Will my insurance cover it? Do I have insurance? What are all my benefits? What do they mean? Not understanding what insurance, you take a vote. I wonder how many people truly understand what health insurance covers. Though, again, on the disease side, you find that the patients are pretty well educated, but there's a lot of these little twists and turns in there. It's understanding sort of the complex processes. It's something in the United States with the hundreds of insurance companies, and then within the insurance companies, the multitude of benefit designs and plans make it very difficult as to what needs to be done. Also, during the initial treatment, there's the fear of the cost of therapy. A lot of these therapies, they are expensive. And what mean? How does one navigate through that? What does it mean for you individually? And then obviously any of the adverse events on that side of it. And then maintaining the therapy. So it's been reported that the second issue we have in the United States is actually adherence. Patients, maintain their therapy to really help the disease. During the treatment, people have change of life events. Insurance plans change, jobs change. So it's really being aware of what's available and how to help through that. Sometimes recertification for your disease, for your treatment, those type of things. The continuity of the therapy and who knows what may change in regards to maximums that may be on policies now or that may come in the future. This is really, there's so many words out there that involve health insurance. It really is difficult to sort of understand all that. Because I think navigating health insurance toolkit that Global Genes has together can help you with that. But it's also always nice to have a dialogue with somebody to really help understand. The programs that a manufacturer puts together, we really try to develop something that has a personalized patient support that identifies your specific issue and what needs to be done. How do you navigate through that? The programs, help the insurance companies. As I said, many of them don't know the disease. They don't understand the therapy. One of the diseases that I've worked on the therapy had been out there for 5 years, and yet the insurance company was still saying it was under investigational use, even though we had FDA approval. So it's really helping that educational side. The connection to and support for patient organizations. We really do like to work with the patient organization, providing them grants, helping them educate patients themselves. What is it? Adult learning takes 7 times to hear it. So it's always helpful to hear from the different experts on their take of the disease, their take of the therapy, things like that, as well as being a resource. I say it's someplace that you can go to and have questions answered, or at least having somebody help you through things. I'll go through each of these, but these are some of the services that manufacturers have. Drug, it varies based on the disease. It varies based on the drug. It varies on, what the manufacturer can do. at the different times. So I'm going to, as I just said, the ability to educate about the disease, and that's really helping the patients, their caregivers, and others understand what does it take for the disease, and understanding all that's involved. So a lot goes into the education and putting it in sort of the different terminology that makes sense. When you're talking to your physician or the nurse, they're using words that I don't even understand, and so how do we do that? So the things the programs will do is try to really put that in a language that you can understand. Product information and specific therapy requirements. It's helpful with the requirements of the FDA. You have to put a package insert that if you've all opened those up and the very tiny language or words font that is used, the program really helps to understand that. What are the specifics regarding the dosing? What are the specific requires? If it's a drug that requires mixing, if it's an injectable, how is that done? Where can it be done? Does it have to be done in the physician office? Can it be done at home? It's really understanding all of those type of elements. A program also helps review the patient's insurance status and assist the patient physician in really getting insurance approval for that product. Program, yes, the company knows, obviously the desire is to sell the product, but in the disease world, it really is getting the right therapy for the right patient and making sure that that's done, and really understanding all those nuances regarding the insurance that's out there. Several, not-for-profit, 501c3 is a charitable or not-for-profit organization. A lot of the companies provide donations to them that then help provide services to the patients that need to be done. The company itself may have what they call a branded program, so it's a financial assistance that the company can give. Some rules and regulations out there in regards to the government program versus what they call a private insurance or commercial insurance. And all that comes into play, and again, the manufacturing programs can really help understand that and what's best for you. Assistance of home care if that's needed in the nursing support. It varies by product, it varies by the disease. But usually an outreach to that, as we said, it's really to try to get the therapy that the patient and the physician want, and making sure that they have access to that. Staff is training. We do a lot of training of our staff at the company to make sure they understand that you're actually talking to somebody who knows about the disease, knows about the drug and the therapy, and really understands sort of what a patient or the caregiver has gone through in providing the next step for support. We use especially pharmacies a lot, and the reason is especially pharmacies, we get the chance to really educate the pharmacists that will be handling our product. That means that they'll be working with the patients with the disease. We do a lot of education on that so that they know the nuances of the drug, they know the side effects of the drug, they know about the disease, so that when somebody's calling their specialty pharmacy, that specialty pharmacy, really knows and understands where you're coming from. With a pharmacy, with a specialty pharmacy, we try to make sure that there's 24/7 support on the pharmacy side and nursing if needed. So if somebody ends up in the ER in the middle of the night, they can call that specialty pharmacy because that pharmacist has been trained on the disease of the product. Or if you work the late shifts and you're calling in the middle of the day, or any time that you need, we try to make sure that those services are provided. We provide, if there's needed pharmacy supplies. Again, it depends on the therapy, depends on the disease, but all those are usually provided, they're tracked, and wrap around service so that a patient or a physician office has all the things that are needed on that. Adherence, mentioned, it's one of the big things out there. So it's always checking in and seeing, again, based on what the patient or the physician really, wants for their interaction. But it really is helpful to understand that somebody's actually taking a medication that's been prescribed. So there's payer education, contracting with the payers. So there's letters of agreement sometimes that has to be done between a specific insurance company. And my definition of the payer is an insurance company. And really sort of understanding that to the specific therapy and the product. And then, so there's free drugs. The manufacturers usually develop a free drug program to help patients, one, if they don't have insurance to need the therapy, or two, as a bridge if something falls through. But one of these is really to check with the manufacturer about what those requirements are for their drug programs. The usually on the rare disease side requires registries to monitor the drug. They usually want to make sure to see that the drug's being used effectively, to also do sort of long-term studies. You'll see that when a drug is approved, they'll say they require a phase 4 study, and that usually involves registries. It is usually voluntary, and the physicians and patients are encouraged to register with that, so that the overall drug effect can be measured. Diagnostic testing. Many of the programs may offer a diagnostic test for that specific disease. You sure may not cover it, and then the program will cover it. But they try to work through that to make sure everybody knows and understands what diagnostic testing is out there. This one, I'm going to go through just a couple. I mean, we know for Duchenne muscular dystrophy was just approved recently, and Sarepta has put a program. A lot of the manufacturers who work within rare disease create these programs really to help the patient and the physician through the whole insurance process so they understand. So another program by Biogen for spinal muscle atrophy. That's been there's a program there that's developed. What you see if you go into the website there, you see that again there's a lot of the same type of assistance is out there to help patients. Overall, Biogen, Shire, for a lot of their rare diseases, they have a lot of programs out there. For the future, right now everything is up there. The White House and what's happening there with the new president, the Congress with the Senate and the House of Representatives. Everybody has their view of that, and then the states and what may be pushed back down to the states. I think the bottom line on this, though, is that there is some side to all of this. And one of the things that the manufacturer programs really try to help, so they know and understand whatever the rules, whatever the regulations, whatever the laws that are being passed, they know and understand to bring it down to the patient level and what that means. And that's why it really is important to work with the manufacturer programs on that, so they can help you all the way through your insurance issue. And
our audience that they can instant message questions they may have for our panelists, and we'll try to work them into our conversation as best we can. But Dave, let me ask you about the patient access programs. They provide a range of services. How can a patient find a program, and are these programs always associated with a specific drug or drug maker?
Generally, they are. I mean, that's one of the beauties about it is that for that specific disease and that specific product, the drug company will set up this program. It's a case management type program that helps the patients and the physicians all the way through that. But it generally is. So you really need to know and understand the drug. So when a physician is talking about the drug, sometimes they'll use the scientific name to really get the brand name of the drug, and then check that out, and you'll see as they showed in regards to Sarepta and some of the other Biogen, the type of programs that they have. Don't be afraid to call and ask questions about it.
They're work in a highly regulated industry, there are things, these patient access programs that are supported by drug makers, are there certain things they can and can't do? What are they prohibited from doing, and what are they allowed to do?
I can tell you, and also I wanted to mention there is a website, Partnership for Prescription Assistance. Well, the question is whether they're always up to date enough on that, and that's why it's better to go right to the manufacturer. But there are some things that, in regards to the access program, generally, the manufacturer, the drug maker has, work with the patients and the physicians, and they have to follow, whatever the requirements are. There's HIPAA requirements, which is the confidentiality, as well as, sometimes the insurance companies require that the information has to come from the patient or come from the physician. But the main thing is with the drug company will work to, help understand what the need is, explain to the physician and patient exactly what they need to do, sometimes tell them exactly where they need to go, who they need to send the information to, and all of that. For financial assistance programs, there are very specific regulations out there. Even those are up, being discussed now in Washington. But, there's certain things for government programs that a manufacturer cannot provide financial assistance to those patients who have that type of insurance. That's why we work closely with the charitable organizations on that.
So, doctor has diagnosed a patient with a rare disease. They've prescribed a drug. At what point does that patient need to be in touch with his or her insurance company?
Well, with that, really, the minute that you find out, obviously I am biased. I see the drug company and the programs that they develop. So that should be really one of the first steps on that patient, because usually the case management systems that the manufacturers have put in place help guide the patients through that and guide and get the information, know who to talk to, know the right language to use. But as a patient, I would also just, call the insurance company too and get a sense. You need to really be insistent. Sometimes when you get the general customer service, you really understand. And, you should ask to say, is there a case management program that the insurance company has? I have a rare disease. Can I talk to somebody there? If it's specifically a drug, ask to speak to somebody in the pharmacy program. Ask to speak to the chief pharmacy director.
Is there an easy way to find out ahead of time what an insurance company will cover and not cover? Is this something that can be determined before buying a policy if a person's in a position to choose among carriers?
Well, technically you are supposed to be able to ask the insurance company. Again, I wouldn't rely on the customer service. I really be able to talk to the pharmacy director. We all know that sometimes the policies and the benefits change on that. So you can call and ask, and generally they should have that information. If it's a drug that requires the medical benefit, how is that given? How is it provided? If it's a drug that's an oral product through the pharmacy program, so I talk to the pharmacy director and really knowing and understanding that from, the pharmacy side of things.
We're talking a lot from the drug side, but let's say a doctor may want to prescribe a diagnostic test that require prior authorization from an insurance company. How can a patient work as effectively as possible in getting that approval?
Diagnostics are sometimes difficult because of the timing, and the physician wants to do the test now or get the specimen and do that. Generally, it is working with the physician office, and if it's they should know how to sort of get that through. Always, able to appeal something if you get a denial on that. We do know for a fact that a lot of the genetic testing, the insurance companies just don't pay for it. Part of that is being able to, provide, working with the physicians to provide that type of information, meaning, for this disease, this genetic test is really where it's confirmatory. Things is to look within the policies within the insurance company, because they will send lists for that disease, and even the rare diseases, they'll list what they consider to be the confirmatory test. So it's really equipping oneself sort of with that knowledge and not being afraid to ask and keep pushing it up the chain there, because, it's always sort of at a customer service level, but, continue to ask, up to the next step, bring it up to the next step. I think Gina will go through some of hers where she said some of the issues, again, getting the insurance companies to cover the diagnostic test.
Well,
an issue. And I know Global Genes and NORD actually are trying to work those types of issues.
Look at the fact that the patient programs that are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies tend to be fairly product specific. If there's an existing therapy for a specific disease, can these programs help get access to a diagnostic that would determine whether or not a patient has that specific disease?
The questions would be to ask, because generally the programs are well-rounded. Yes, if you use that specific drug, but sometimes, before you step back and say whether you use that drug or not, if there's a couple companies out there and you need the diagnostic test, it doesn't hurt to ask, call each company and say, I'm not sure which drug I'm going on. I may be going on your drug, but what about the diagnostic test? So don't be afraid to ask those questions and stuff right up. Another resource, and actually I didn't mention in the Navigating Health Insurance, is if you have an employer-based plan, we're not the benefits people or in the HR department, then help you. They can help you through that, and don't be afraid to talk to them and discuss the issues that you're having.
Well, I remind our audience they can instant message questions they may have for our panelists, and we'll try to work them into the conversation as best we can. We're going to discuss more about what to do when your insurance company refuses to grant access or prior authorization or denies a claim. But let's bring Gina in here. Gina's going to provide a perspective on insurance issues from her point of view, both as a patient and a mother of 3 undiagnosed children. Gina?
Yeah, hi, Ashley. I know I'm in there a couple of times. I can't use the slide. Can you try me a different one?
Yep, let me go ahead and see if I can switch over to one of your other logins.
There's. There we go. I got it.
There we go.
Yeah,
All right,
I know.
perfect.
Sorry. All right. Hi, I am. If anybody knows me on this, I usually get emotional, so I just have to say, I'm one of 3 children that are undiagnosed, and what we say is we live in a diagnostic odyssey times 4. And what does that mean for our family? They asked me just to kind of share our story. I'll go through it quickly. My and I went to have children until we were financially sound. It was 2.5 years waited. Wanted to have 4 children, and we wanted to have a house with a white picket fence. And we were ready to be parents. So those are my 3 children, Ava, Oscar, and Lucy. Notice we don't have a 4th child. We were told it would be irresponsible for us to have another child when we know that our children have a genetic dysfunction. And we have yet to get the white picket fence due to the diagnostic odyssey. So Arnie has been through hospitals and over 50 specialists on this diagnostic journey. And is my oldest, and I'll just quickly go through just to give you some background. Ava was born healthy. At 3 years, we found that she had an arachnoid cyst, which is a mass that is not cancerous. And that was the first time that we realized that we have a 100% healthy child. And our eyes turned into what did that mean for us financially with our insurance. Through that, we ended up experiencing a lot with Ava. She ended up having 4 cranial brain surgeries, 2 external brains, the cyst federation, shunt dependent. She also had these other issues that we were trying to find a diagnosis for, the red hands, the mast cell-like rashes. We are still undiagnosed. What kind of the overview is it's an autonomic neuropathy. Everything your body does naturally, Ava doesn't do correctly. Temperature control, fatigue, heart rate, many other issues that come along with an unknown autonomic neuropathy. So I'll just continue through. That's Oscar. We started with Oscar when he was 2, and we went through the whole system. Oncology, when it wasn't leukemia, they said we don't know. And I mentioned that Ava had been diagnosed with an autonomic neuropathy, so we went back to the Mayo Clinic, and Oscar was also having an autonomic neuropathy, and unknown. And then we realized it in Lucy when she was about 2, I think, as well. And Lucy's been through so many procedures. She's been admitted several times. We've been in the ER many times. And I'm also undiagnosed. And it started, I gave birth to Ava, and I don't know if it was a C-section. And through that journey of Ava's 4 cranial brain surgeries, my disease process progressed. And so I've been also through a lot of procedures and a lot going on, and we still don't have a diagnosis for the root cause of our disease. I came out of the world of the walls of the hospital and into the world of genetics, and so that was a new experience for us to diagnose us, and we worked with company back and forth, trying to give them the best presentation of why we needed whole genome sequencing. That to us was the holy grail to give us a diagnosis. And that, trying to work with the insurance company was over a half. And we were denied, obviously. And I looked it up, and in the policy it says, at this time, the clinical utility of such testing has not been established. And it was flat out no. And we worked so long on that, and then going for whole exome sequencing for the family life, that was denied. That was very upsetting at that time, because after waiting all this, a year, we were getting what is called a quint analysis, which means that they sequenced all 5 of us, but only analyzed Ava. What that told me is that Oscar and Lucy's lives were not as important as Ava's life, but they did approve that. So we took that. We have since been able to have whole genome sequencing in a research setting with the Utah Genome Project, and we were very blessed to even take that further, to have the Utah Project, University of Utah, shared the data with the UDN, the Undiagnosed Disease Network, through the NIH. And that put us into a clinical setting with our whole genome. So we worked around it, but that has been over 3 years of taking that time. And so when I started RUN, mission was to have whole genome sequencing in a clinical setting paid by insurance. We're from that right now. There are a couple of places in the United States that do it, but it costs. It's not covered by insurance, but you can have it in a clinical setting. So I'm going to keep going. There are just some rare disease facts that I wanted to throw in there. And I wanted to come away from our family, and I really, when Global Genes asked me to do this, I reached out to a lot of my families. I said, just send me what your thoughts are on your issues with insurance. And I was blessed to see a lot of these beautiful faces last night and their moms, and it was really emotional to me to really see how this affects us every single day. I'm including some slides from some of the moms. Jean and Ricky, I saw them. I'm going to let people read them on. I'm just going to kind of summarize what they're saying. But Jean had a really good insurance company that really helped with Ricky. They just understood how her rare disease was, and they approved a lot. The school district insurance company, and now this insurance company is not helping and covering everything. And I think it's hard because you have a child that is in pain between a 7 and a 9. You have of a treatment, the Botox injections, and they're taking them. And so that's one of the things. You can have a treatment and they won't approve it, and you could go out of network to find a specialist and you won't approve it. So no exceptions. That is one with Ricky. Lane has 2 daughters that have KRI malformation and other issues, and asked her to give me her opinion. And it's come back to that theme of basic. How do you pay your mortgage when you have to pay the bill, and how do you spend all that time on the phone and going through, and you finally get to someone, but then they do all these summarizes it, considered experimental, or they're out of network, or you should ask. It's very, very frustrating, and it's a full-time job, is what one of my Christian Jacobs said last night. It's a full-time job. More what he said a little bit, but then Sarah, with all, it's just the same. So I want, hopefully you can take the time to read all of their quotes. But Sarah brings up about the diagnostic code. When you're undiagnosed, a lot of times there isn't a code that the insurance company can use, and you're left with just no answers for that. So everything is a fight when you're undiagnosed, is what she said, and even simple things like a skin biopsy for skin cancer, she's very rare. She just had this, and they've never seen anything like that. So being undiagnosed doesn't mean it isn't happening, is what Sarah was trying to say. Sorry. And this was a very good quote from Josh, his dad, and they were talking about the Medicaid waiver program, and he was accepted when he was 3 or 4, and then when Kaylin turned 13, his dad, Josh, was presented with moving to a different state. How does that work with you when you have to go on a wait list again and on a new waiting list? And it affects even more just the health of your child, but your career path and your job. I thought this quote was very good from Josh. And again, he talks about the bankruptcy. You have to sometimes choose to pay your insurance or pay your bills. And I'm sorry, that for our family was that with our bills during that diagnostic odyssey, and still trying to fight that back. Harley, I thought it was a good point when Stephanie said one of the most frustrating issues with our insurance company today is that they will not cover Harley's medication because it is not known to treat her disease. Fell into the 1% that the standard medication failed, and that's when you're really worried. How do you do that? Stephanie stays on the phone and fights the insurance to get it approved. I really want the people to write in their comments, and we can see all the issues. There was another family that did a transplant, and they had to fight the insurance so long that the disease progressed so much. And if he just would have had the transplant when the doctors wanted it, he would have lived long and would have not losing his eyesight because the transplant didn't happen fast enough. So it's a very major issue for families. And another one with Christian that he brought up, is that he's 25 years old, and he's going to turn 26 pretty soon, and he's going to fall off his parents' insurance. And what is he going to do? He's a full-time student, a nursing student, and there's so many issues to address with this. So I want to get the questions coming and have people share their issues. My dream through this diagnostic odyssey was really to have everybody talk to each other. I think the insurance companies have to learn from us. I just called the insurance commissioner of the state of Wisconsin and asked for a meeting with him. And I don't know what will come out of it, but I want our voices to be heard about the struggles that we have financially with the insurance companies and the full-time job. And I did have a case manager at one of my places, and it still didn't help me. She just kept saying, you have arthritis. That's what your file says. And I thought, I have more than just arthritis. And I just couldn't work with another, our children's hospital in Wisconsin, Children's Hospital Wisconsin, has a special needs program. And it really is not just for special needs children, but for all medically complex children. I'm excited because there's not a lot of hospitals like this in the country that do that, and I think that's another resource that I'm really interested in to see if they will help us with the insurance issues that our 3 medically complex children have. When I started this diagnostic odyssey, like I said, to talk to each other, and we're going to be launching a platform hopefully in 2017 soon that will have the families be able to communicate with each other, with physicians, with the insurance company, with researchers, and trying to get the conversation going, and having hopefully the insurance company will hear our voices and work with us to figure out how to do this better for rare and undiagnosed diseases. I really would love to have Danny have questions and continue the conversation.
I know you've had an experience with a number of different insurance companies. Are pretty much all the same, or is there great variance in how one company or another deals with a rare disease patient?
It's the board the same for our family. I think the battle has been continuous. I did mention that Janine had a different experience. She had one company that was great and worked with them, and then another one that didn't. So in our experience, it's been a struggle with every single insurance company.
When your children are still without diagnoses, I imagine that creates some greater challenges Do you think it's harder to get an insurance company to pay for a procedure, a drug, or a test without having a diagnosis? Is it tougher to make the case for medical necessity?
Yes. An example with one of the scans that they wanted, and it was a very expensive scan. And the doctors, I actually had, I think, 4 different specialties put in the request for and it was denied. And they still, the peer reviews is what a lot of the doctors have to do to get the test approved, and it takes time for them. But it is kind of, because insurance says you're just going on an exploratory fishing. We don't need to do it. It's not medically necessary. And even if you have more than one specialist saying, no, this is what we need to do, this is the next step in her diagnostic odyssey, and you still get denied, it's heartbreaking.
We think a lot about shopping around for insurance companies to find ones that work better with rare disease patients, but doctors play a critical role in this, since they're often the ones that will need to make a case for medical necessity of a treatment or educate an insurance company about a condition. What role have your doctors played in this regard, and is there a variance in the amount of time and effort willing to make to get an insurance company to sign off a treatment for you?
I think you have to be working with the team of doctors that believe and believe in finding an answer for you. I've worked with doctors that, yes, they'll do the one call or they'll do the letter, but it gets denied. But I also have the doctors that won't give up on me and call again. Dr. Kathy Peterson is one at the University of Utah, has spent hours fighting the insurance company. And that accounts the Reagan device that was doing our whole genome sequencing. The time that she was putting in to fight the insurance company to get our sequencing approved, countless hours. I think it is the dedication of certain doctors that are in the fight with us and believe this diagnosis and it's necessary. And there are a lot of doctors that don't do that, and it's frustrating, but you do have to keep finding the doctors that will fight for you.
Medical bills can be overwhelming. You talked about the need to fight to keep your lifestyle on the face of bills. Can you talk a little about that, and can you offer any advice in this regard?
You're gonna cry, Danny. There was that.
I want you to cry.
I think that's true. When I was talking to Danny about that, and someone said to us, "Well, why downsize your house? Why don't you sell your cars?" When we were struggling financially, and I said, "Well, I didn't want my children to have to sacrifice what we want their life to be. I mean, a lot of these families are filing bankruptcy more than once and having to move from their homes to a studio apartment to pay their bills. Advice for it is, it's hard is to reach out and look for financial help. But that's also a big problem because you sometimes make too much money in your salary to qualify for the financial aid. You have to try and find the organizations, for example, like Angel Hands in Utah, that help families financially. We stepped in and helped our family at a very dark time when we needed help to pay our medical bills. I think places keep looking what is out there and applying for everything. But the catch to that is when you have sick children, the time is part of the problem. You don't have the time to fill out everything. But I think just keep plugging along and don't give up, and just I don't know. It's a tough question for me, to be honest.
Our audience that they can instant message questions they may have for our panelists, and we'll try to work them into our conversation as best as we can. Let's bring Dave back in here, and I'd like to get both of your thoughts on the access and options patients face. What can do when their insurance company says no? Dave, can you walk us through the process of what an appeals is like and what appeals a patient can make?
Sure, and as Gina said, it is difficult working with the insurance companies. No ands and buts about it. And actually, that's why when a manufacturer has developed a therapy, and with Gina's case being undiagnosed, it makes it very difficult. Because I've heard from our patients a long time ago and the physicians that when you have the product approved, the payers are still denying coverage and all that. So that's sort of historically why the companies did that. Yeah, the thing is you should never take no as an answer, and you can constantly go back. Now, it depends on the type of plans that you have. with the Medicare Advantage, Medicare in general, as well as the commercial payers about appealing their decision on the coverage, and then whether it moves into a grievance process. But it's just unfortunately one of those things that you just have to keep going back on those. So that's when you really try to work to bring the chief pharmacy director or the chief medical officer of the plan. Sometimes they'll punt on that, but the thing is you just keep sort of going after them to do that. Again, another way is, as I said, if it's an employer-based plan, the HR department can help do that. I mean, I worked for, we provided services to a major company where we would go into the insurance company because if it's a self-insured plan, the employer would reset the benefits to move forward. Now, lots of change with the insurance industry, those types of services out there.
Is there something patient assistance programs can do in helping you through the appeals process?
Well, again, the patient assistance program, if we're defining it as the sort of like type of case management programs that are out there, they can, sometimes, as I said, the appeal has to come from the physician or the patient, but programs can help to make sure that the physician has sometimes exactly who to go to, that they have the right information in regards to studies that are out there, the research papers that are out there, information specifically about the clinical trial that occurred. All that can be pulled together to, make a case as to why this should be, the patient get access to the medication.
So what's your experience when it comes to insurance companies that have refused to provide prior authorization or pay for something that your doctor has deemed medically necessary? Have you had to go it alone? Have you been able to enlist outside help?
Had to go it alone. Yes, got it. That's why medical bills are so high. A lot of the times you're so desperate for something to take. You want the diagnosis, but you want the treatment or to treat your symptoms. And so a lot of the stuff that they approve, we pay for it ourselves, and that's where the financial burden comes into play.
We've had a number of questions from the audience that have to do with alternative ways of paying or outside resources. What resources can help a patient afford a needed treatment, and are there resources either of you can suggest?
Well, this is Dave. Again, it is always a battle. I think what you could do, and as I said, my bias with the manufacturer program is you try to build your team, both from the manufacturer, working with if there's a patient organization out there, and yes, even your state legislatures, get your state and your federal legislators. Those ways that you can approach to sort of build that. There are state pharmacy assistance programs there, but I think about less than half of the states actually have those. There are some of the charitable organizations through religious charities that offer assistance. There was just I live in the Boston area, and there's one of the programs there about Warren Buffett. They set up an organization where his sister manages the foundation and does give the letters she said that she gets to help specifically with things on an ongoing basis. But that they get thousands of letters, and they actually do provide those type of services, which was surprising to me that there's a foundation out there really advertised, but they read every single letter that they get. And they all do letters. They do not take anything via email, just to let you know that they want a physical letter in their hand.
Yeah, I just think keep look what else is out in the community. I know crowdfunding. A lot of families do crowdfunding to support their diagnostic odyssey or their treatment plan. I think that is a good idea. Some families have been successful about that. My goal with Run was always, if I had funding, I would be helping the families financially. That's a dream of mine, but I've yet to have funding. So I think just looking out for what is out in your community and raising awareness as much as you can.
And questions from the audience specifically address cost-sharing ministries. These are things like MoneyShare. Either of you familiar with these programs?
I haven't really worked with MoneyShare. There was at one of the meetings I was at, I think it was a Catholic charitable organization that did provide assistance with co-pays and that type of information.
So there are avenues patients could use when an insurance company appeals process has been exhausted. The first of these is going to your state insurance department. How can a patient get help in overturning an insurance company denial?
In regards to the, first of all, you've got to make sure the denial is done in a true clinical medical basis. So that's why having the studies, even anecdotal studies that are printed in peer-reviewed journals, helps sway a medical director at an insurance company. The state insurance departments, the head of those, they do want to hear from patients. The problem you have sometimes there is that you have to be very insistent and keep calling. But there are some states where, they will sit and listen, and then they can help have a dialogue with the insurance company. Again, part of this is getting your team and having a variety of ways to approach that.
Well, there's also going to the media, which seems to be the last resort people turn to. But I'm wondering, how effective is this as a strategy for getting an insurance company to change its mind on a denial?
So I did work for a couple large insurance companies in regards to products in general, the HMOs and PPOs and all that. And the CEOs and the chief medical officer will always say they don't want to be on the 6 o'clock news. So it does help, in a way. If there's a consumer advocate, a lot of the local TV stations have consumer advocates that handle all types of programs. And so if you have to, I would use one of those to see if they would help. A lot of the times, it does take a bit to force a company into an insurance company into that. But their goal is to be out of the news for denying the type of coverage. But again, it takes a sort of a team effort to do that, as long as we have the medical evidence behind that.
Well, the Morse family was the example I mentioned earlier with Grayson and needing the transplant, and they did go to the media, and it did help tremendously to have that transplant approved. So, and I think that's why our family is so public with our journey, is trying to get that message to the insurance company about whole genome sequencing. I think it's definitely helped our family. In other ways, we didn't get it approved by insurance, but it helped us get it in a different way in research. So I think sharing your story and is huge for the brain undiagnosed community in all ways. And the more awareness that we raise, not like targeting the insurance, but in overall awareness, we all know is important. But I definitely think your story and the Morse family is a perfect example.
We've got more questions than time, and I'm going to try to do these in rapid fire, so if you could just share your thoughts quickly. There's a question about bundled payments, particularly in the context of a condition that requires transplantation. Are you seeing more bundled payments which might limit what medications a patient would get within the bundle?
Well, I don't have that specific experience. But I do know from talking to other colleagues that that is a way that some of the insurance companies are looking at regarding the bundled payments for whether it be transplantation or a medical condition on that. Again, one of the things would be to see if that can always be carved out because of, for instance, let's say a high-cost drug that was never included when they did the bundle payment, or that it's been approved subsequent to that. So it's really pushing on that. I have to say, that is a difficult one. And transplantation was always difficult. With Medicare, where they would pay for the transplantation, pay for the transplanted drugs that you needed, and then once you got discharged, they didn't cover the drugs. So a lot has changed, but there is still those difficulties out there.
Another issue this is more of a comment, but let me ask a question about it. There's this issue that if your doctor prescribes a drug, it may be an expensive therapy, and an insurance company may insist on you failing a simple therapy first, or using what's known as step therapy, where you graduate from treatment to newer treatment. What can a patient do if a doctor says, this is the drug you need? Is there any way to shortcut an insurance company insisting on a step therapy or a fail fast approach?
Part of that is the insurance company, they set their policies up that, and they do put in step therapies for things. But if you work with, if they can work with the manufacturer to make sure they have the latest research, the articles that are out there, you can, and tie it to the specific case. You can sometimes sort of go around the step therapy. The step therapy is an issue. It's one of the things that they've done to reduce costs. But it's the right information is provided specific to that case, and a physician writes usually a compelling letter saying, this is why I believe my patient should not go through this step therapy, and why I think this therapy is for that patient based on their journey, their care, where they are in their disease, and really have the discussion with the chief medical officer. A lot of physicians don't realize that they do have some power with the insurance company, and that to encourage them to talk to the chief medical officer of the insurance company. A lot of times that will persuade, and the chief medical officer can make a sort of a variance for that specific patient.
We had a question for each of you relating to the same topic, but Gina, is there advice that you would have for manufacturers who enter the rare disease space that would best assist you not only as a patient but also a caregiver?
Communication, sitting and talking to the families. I think making it personal. Definitely communication is the key, right? I don't think every family has their own battles, and there's a common theme that we all have, but each family just talk, open doors of communication.
For you, the question was, are there missteps that manufacturers have taken and how they set up their assistant programs that you'd recommend others avoid?
There are. Part of it is you learn as you go, and as you learn more about the disease. And as I said, also as you understand, that's one of the things is to really understand the diagnostic journey a patient goes through. The steps, I would say, when manufacturers set up programs, if they sort of outsource the program or case management, that's, perhaps they haven't done the intense training that needs to be done within the sort of vendor that they've chosen versus an in-house program that they're actually doing it themselves and the staff of that manufacturer. So those are some things that, really to look at that in regards to the type of program. Also the level, part of it is to really understand, what are the types of insurance that the patients have with that disease. Because, again, there's so many different requirements out there and rules and regulations on how you set up a program and what can be done. And finding out who is involved in the therapies. Are you reaching the right physician? There's some steps in regards to say they focus a little bit too much on the true specialist, where sometimes the patients are stuck back at the maybe the general or the internist. So it's really understanding those types of things.
I apologize to listeners whose questions we haven't gotten to. If you want to learn more, I suggest you start by taking a look at the Global Genes Toolkit on navigating insurance. You can find that on the Global Genes website. As a final question, I'd like to ask each of you for a parting piece of advice for listeners as they seek to navigate the world of insurance as rare disease patients. Is there something you've learned from your experience that can help them better address a fight, be more effective, or avoid pitfalls? Well, let's start with Gina.
I would say my advice is really working with your medical team, and we mentioned the letters. I mean, if you can do the fight yourself with letters, but when you're backed by your medical professionals, I think that is going to help with your insurance battle times 1,000. I do believe trying to not have all the anxiety when you're on the phone and be calm and strong with advice, because it only works yourself up, and it doesn't work when you're
there.
Yeah, I still hear. Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid to speak up and push back. And even though you're dealing with, highly intelligent people, sometimes they don't have the latest research. They don't have the latest information. That really having the medical evidence on that. I know that some of the questions regarding off-label use, and, it's being able, the manufacturer cannot ever promote anything that they haven't studied. The physicians can go to battle, so it's making sure that the physicians have gotten the latest research, and they can get that from the chief medical officer of the pharmaceutical company. It can be on a medical-to-medical discussion, never any other place on that. And it's really building that team and having the resources and knowing that there are people out there for that. As Gina has said, it is hard with the undiagnosed because, she's got huge battles because everybody wants to put things in a bucket, and just know that, hey, the bucket can be ever expanding and really to push on that and not get depressed. Sometimes, you have to use the honey versus the vinegar to really try to get things through.
We'll try to do a lot in a compressed amount of time on an issue that we could go much deeper on, but I'd like to thank our panelists, Dave Caponera, Vice President of Patient Engagement and Access Support for Catalyst Pharmaceuticals, and Gina Zanuck, Co-founder and Executive Director of the Rare Disease and Undiagnosed Network. Thank you for joining us today. I'd also like to thank the staff of Global Genes and Ashley E. for her great work in putting together and coordinating today's program. To join us for our next webinar, Make Sense of Your Dollars, which will address how to manage the financial burdens of a rare disease and how to manage them. That will be held May 23rd. I hope you'll join me every week for our Rarecast podcast, which you can find on Global Genes Rare Daily or on SoundCloud, iTunes, or Stitcher. You can continue the conversation with us by following us on Twitter, @DSLevine, and Global Genes is @GlobalGenes. And as you seek to learn about rare disease and connect with others, I encourage you to explore the many resources available on the Global Genes website. On behalf of Global Genes, I'm Daniel Levine. Thank you all for joining us today for this webinar.